Hello and welcome. You're starting down a very long journey this fall, the preparation for the 2021 All-Region Etudes. And of course, they're very difficult, always. This year's Etudes all come from the fairly famous studies written in the mid-early 1800s. If you're new to the All-Region process as a freshman, it's a big jump from middle school to high school. And if you're a returning high school student, you know already it takes a lot of practice to be competitive at the all-region and all-area levels. My overarching theme of this presentation is to remind you that you need to practice every day, and it is a long journey to prepare for the auditions at the end of the fall semester. So prior to recording this video, I took about 5 reeds and I let them sit in water, took them out of the water after about 10 seconds and let them sit on a tabletop because the reeds will naturally absorb the water. We really don't have to let them sit in a bottle of water. Then I decided which reed I'm going to use for this video. And so I would encourage you to do the same. Soak several reeds and then decide which ones that you like the best. Please only practice on reeds that play with a good sound. Now, to begin our preparation for any rehearsal or any practice session for the All-Region Etudes, let's start with the long tones. So that gets our mind focused on sound quality and moving air. So I'm going to play a couple of long tones in a way that I do a warm-up. If my low notes respond with a good tone and respond easily, then I know that probably the reed is in good shape. And then my next step would be to think about the scales that I'm going to play that day. By the time you play your long tones, you should have a really good idea about how your reed's going to work that day. If you have a tuner, and you should have a tuner nearby, check the pitch of A440, which we call A4, meaning the 4th A on the piano. So A4 is the standard oboe player's pitch, and we check that pitch without vibrato. We want to see where you sit. A lot of younger players, they will look at the tuner when they play, and then they want to lip up or lip down. I really don't think that's a good idea, because instead of teaching you to play on pitch, it teaches you to lip up and lip down quickly. Instead, see where your pitch sits with a particular reed. Play it a few times without looking at the tuner. After a few seconds, look at the tuner. Start by looking away, then glance at the tuner. Are you consistently flat, or consistently sharp, or consistently in tune? It's very rare to find any reed or person who plays exactly the same pitch many, many times in a row until they're very experienced. So don't be too hard on yourself. The first step to self-assessment is finding what are your tendencies. Do you tend to play flat? Do you tend to play sharp? Most high school players tend to play at a pitch level, and then the longer they play, the sharper they get. Also, the condition of your reed, of course, affects the pitch. So before you get into the music, you've done the long tones. Now assess where your pitch is going to be. I'll admit, as a young player, I did not like scales at all. I could play them, but I did not like them. As I've gotten older, I realize scales are the vocabulary we use in a composition. And the most important thing about scales is playing evenly. Speed is a function of persistence and time. Only start by playing the scale speed that you can play well. So here's the scale that goes with Etude number 5, the G major scale. All of the Etude is not in G major, but most of it is, enough that you should focus on the G major scale. When we look at the G major scale, one of the things we can look at is, wow, the G major scale goes really high in this Etude. We're expected to play a high E that we will call E6. And that has a very awkward finger pattern. Let's look at a standard fingering to be used on the high E. On the oboe, we'd use the first octave key, half hole, second finger, third finger of the left hand. In the right hand, we'll use the second and third fingers only. And we're going to use the A flat key. That will work for most of you. If you find that the note is very flat, you have two options. You can also add the E flat key at the same time. Right, you have to press two keys at the same time. Another option is if you have a professional level oboe, you will have a third octave key in the back and you can add the third octave key. So there's a range of options, but again, the basic fingering is first octave key, half hold 2, 3 in the left hand, 2, 3 in the right hand, and add the A flat key. Now I'm going to play the G major scale, what we call the extended range, all the way up to the high note, all the way down to the low note. All of those notes, the high note and the low note, are used in this etude. Here is the scale that goes with etude number 24, the F sharp minor. I've used the F sharp melodic minor because it's the most frequently used scale in this etude. The F sharp that appears at the end of the etude is an extremely rare note under any circumstance. We won't cover it in the scale today, but when we get to the end of the composition in a later video, I will talk about it, of course. So today we won't cover F sharp 6, the highest note in the etude. So we look at the scale and we see the following characteristics. First of all, on the way up, we're going to have to play left D sharp. Then we're going to have to play left forked F with the E flat key on the left side. So the scale shows E sharp, but I always think F natural. And because normally we only go up to C sharp, that's as high as I'm going to go. You'll notice there's accidentals on the way down because the etude does the same thing in descending scales. So now I'm going to show you an example of the F sharp melodic minor scale in the range shown on this paper. Now for etude number 38. The key alone is really daunting, isn't it? 5 sharps. We normally don't play in that key. So we have to think about what is tricky about B major. Well, first of all, A sharp. You're going to be playing A sharp a lot in this etude. And then we've got a high E again. In fact, we have several of them in this etude. Sometimes in this etude, the high E is going to be played with the A flat key on the left side, which I will call left E6. And sometimes the E must be played with the A flat key on the right side, which I'm going to call right E6. So sometimes you're going to hear in subsequent videos left E and right E, depending on how the high E is used. The key of B major is almost the entire range of the oboe. It's very tricky. Another thing we have to look at is how we're going to negotiate the first 2 notes, B to C sharp. If you have a professional level instrument, you have what's called an articulated C sharp, meaning you can start the scale with the C sharp and low B keys down. And I only have to move one finger. But when I was in high school, as with many of you, I didn't have a professional level instrument. So I had to play the opening note of the B scale with the C natural key down and then rock my finger to the C sharp like this. Admittedly, that's more difficult. So if you have a professional level instrument, be glad. You're going to have a little easier time with the scale, and if you don't, you'll have to put in some extra practice with the first couple of notes of the scale. Here's how this B major scale sounds using this extended range. So all of this video talks about warm-up, the things that you have to do before you practice the etude. Long tones, check your pitch, Think about your reed quality and then go over the scales that you're going to play that day. I encourage you, get a small journal and journal your scale progress. How did you sound? What tempo did you use? Did you try the extended range? You will find that over a period of time, you will make noticeable gains because you're journaling and you're consistently practicing and you're consistently evaluating yourself. This is the end of the introduction to the 2021 All-Region Etudes.